Hey, I'm Olivia, and you're listening to Soarin Around WDW. Happy Wednesday, everybody. So, we are back this week to talk about the next section of Hollywood Studios. We're on episode 3 for the Parks of the Present Hollywood Studios section of our series. And we today are going to start with talking about a smaller section of the park called Commissary Lane. And this area of the park was originally part of the Streets of America. And the Streets of America permanently closed April 2016. And at that time, this area became its own land inside of Hollywood Studios, which I found kind of interesting because there's not a ton really going on here. There's only one technical attraction, and then the rest of the area is just dining. So I don't know why they just didn't decide to combine this with another part of the park, but they didn't. It's technically its own section on the map still at this point. We'll see if that gets rearranged when Monstropolis comes to the area or not. The attraction that we're starting off with today is Meet Mickey and Minnie at Red Carpet Dreams. And this is really just a meet and greet, but it does have a queue. It usually does have a wait time in the app, so it's considered an attraction. It opened May 8th, 2016. It's usually open a little later than the other characters, but you have to kind of check the My Disney Experience app to see the hours for each day. When we were there, I believe it was open like 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. almost, and it usually has a 20 to 30 minute wait, but it is nice because most of the time you can meet both Mickey and Minnie at that point, so you don't have to wait for them separately. The Mickey is in his Phantasmic or Fantasia outfit, and it's a cute little meet and greet area. And then Minnie is in this cute little pink dress, looking in like her Hollywood glam. So it's different than their traditional attire, so to speak. And it really has, from our experience, taken about 20 or 30 minutes or so. We have done this meet and greet a couple of times. And when I looked up what this space was before, since it is a newer, so to speak, in the life of the park thing, it used to be the former audition rooms for American Idol back when that show was going on in the Hyperion Theater just around the corner. But have you done this meet and greet, Dad? Or probably not, since Michaela was older at this point when this opened.
Yes, to be really honest, I didn't even know that's what they were doing in the old American Idol audition area there. I had no idea. It sounds like a great meet and greet, though.
Yeah, it is great. And it's inside. The queue is outside mostly, so, but it's covered, but it is inside. So, like, the actual meet and greet is like an air conditioned area. But I don't know what this was before American Idol. I know right next door to this, I don't think it was in the same area. They used to have a Mike and Sully meet and greet right next to it outside, though. And I haven't seen him out there in a while. I don't think this was part of that. I think the building was always there, but I'm not sure what it was before American Idol. I really couldn't find any information about this. Do you know, Dad? Or
I don't. I thought maybe it was the Doug Live Theater, but that's next door to this, isn't it?
yeah, it's like that would be like attached kind of from behind almost, because this is like almost right across from Sci-Fi. So it's
Right.
like that back strip kind of between commissary and sci-fi, but on the left side of sci-fi and the commissary on your right. So yeah, it's just a little space that's been there for a long time, and I couldn't think of what else would have been there before. And then moving over into dining, this does have two really great dining spots in this area. The first is one of our family's favorites, the Sci-Fi Dine-In Theater Restaurant, and this opened April 20th, 1991. The lunch and dinner menus for this restaurant are the same. Usually it opens about 10:30 or 11 a.m. and runs until the park closes. And prices usually range from about $15 to $35 per entree per person. It is just a fixed plate. It's not character dining. And they serve things like burgers, chicken salad sandwiches, prime rib sandwiches, grilled chicken, citrus salads. They do have milkshakes and desserts. And online, when I was reading about this, it did say that they serve popcorn as an hors d'oeuvre, but like I don't ever remember getting popcorn as an hors d'oeuvre. Do you, Dad? Or was that a thing like when we were waiting or something?
I never remember popcorn being at the sci-fi.
Yeah, and Regan went there recently, and I don't remember him talking about that, but that would be an interesting kind of like instead of a bread basket, they give you popcorn. That would be cute because of the movie theme, but I don't recall that, so I don't know where that information came from. Initially, I guess the menu listed items with themed names, so they were called like Tossed in Space was like the garden salad, or the cheesecake that ate New York, Attack of the Killer Club sandwich, and things like that. But those names were changed eventually so that they actually describe the dishes in a more standard and straightforward manner. I think with a lot of people traveling from outside of the country and different things like that, it was hard to know like what you were actually getting, especially if you were not a, English as your first language speaker. So they decided to change that. And then in 1991, the Sci-Fi Dine-In opened along with 19 other new Walt Disney World attractions for the 20th anniversary. So that's why they decided to open this restaurant. It became in that, 20-year anniversary exciting celebration. But then the following year, so 1992, Sci-Fi Dine-In was serving in upwards of 2,200 people daily during peak periods, which made it the park's most popular restaurant. And it was kind of competing with the 50s Primetime Cafe, and it pulled ahead of them about a year after opening. The Sci-Fi Dine-In has received mixed reviews, which I agree with some of these mixed reviews. It's listed as one of the best USA's Today's best restaurants in the American amusement parks ranks, and it was at the time 15th when it was listed as this, but many reviewers rate it basically better for the atmosphere than the actual food, which I do agree with that. Do you agree with that, Dad, that the atmosphere is better than the food you get?
I was just there a year ago, and I'm a burger guy. I thought the burger was great. I thought the chocolate shakes were amazing. So I'm probably one of the minorities when it comes to that. But yeah, we can talk more about that. But yeah, I like the
Yeah.
food. But
Yeah, it is. It's definitely basic food. I know for me, yeah, I'm also a burger eater, so I'm pretty easily pleased. And it is better than the quick service burgers that were in the park from what I remember. It is definitely more expensive than the quick service burgers that are in the park. But I remember Maddie, who is a much healthier eater, struggled a little bit finding something there. And I think one time he got like a grilled chicken sandwich that used to be on the menu, and he was like, it was not good at all, but that, is also different when you're a pickier eater. And starting from the earlier days of the restaurant, it did equip its servers with a point of sale mobile device that relayed the orders to a printer in the kitchen, and at the time was very high tech and was like kind of keeping with the theme because that was a very newer development. So they were one of the first restaurants, especially in an amusement park, to use technology like that. And the Sci-Fi Dine-In is modeled after a 1950s drive-in theater. The entrance is supposed to look like a box office, and guests can walk from the box office along a tall fence to the dining room, where they sit at these countertop booths that are made to look like convertibles from the 1940s and 50s. And the booths were designed by Walt Disney Imagineering. They're made of fiberglass and this chrome plating. The cars do have white wall tires and speakers that are mounted on poles next to each car, and the license plates are all dated from 1955. Each convertible does seat four people, although when the restaurant first opened, they did try to put six people in each car, but it was a little too tight, especially if it's six adults. That would be really difficult to sit in that car with six people. There are also picnic tables near the back. There's about six of them, and those are really only used when the rest of the restaurant is full and guests are willing to forego the car experience, maybe even waiting a long time for a table, and you say, it's fine, I'll sit at the picnic table, or if you don't have reservations. But anyone who has a reservation, according to what I was reading, they will be seated in a car. You might have a wait, but you will be seated in a car. But the first year the restaurant opened, that wasn't the case, and people got upset that they got stuck at the picnic table. So now they try to guarantee a car. The restaurant does have a total seating capacity of about 260 people, and usually the servers are wearing roller skates to get around. Kind of, I feel like this has been hit or miss, but for the most part, they are wearing some kind of roller skates to go around the restaurant, which is always a fun little touch. And while eating at the Sci-Fi Dine-In, guests are watching film clips from the 1950s and 60s. There's different clips from science fiction films, B horror films, monster movies, pseudo documentaries, bizarre newsreels, and animated cartoons. The loop lasts about 47 minutes, so usually you make it all the way through the loop while you're there. And the film clips are taken from different films like The Blob, Frankenstein Meets the Space Monster, Teenagers from Outer Space, The Amazing Colossal Man, Plan 9 from Outer Space, Invasion of the Saucermen, Catwoman of the Moon. The original Attack of the 50-Foot Woman trailer is also included, and they are all shown on a projection screen. I noticed that this list didn't include Tom and Jerry, but they are in there as well, I believe. And during Star Wars weekends, when they used to have those, they did offer a special breakfast called the Star Wars Dine-In Galactic Breakfast. And at that time, guests could interact with Star Wars characters and watch clips from the Star Wars films, which is really cool. And film props and vintage horror and science fiction movie posters are found on the outside perimeter of the restaurant, including a lot of props used in Disney's movie The Rocketeer, which did premiere about 3 months after the restaurant opened in 1991. And so, yeah, this restaurant is really neat. I think just the theming is awesome. I do like the clip reel just because it's classic, but I think it would be really neat if they did different themes, like where they would play maybe more up to date trailers of movies or clips of movies or something, shorts, something like that, while you're sitting there, just because once you go there a few times, you're like, okay, enough of the 50-foot woman or whatever it is. That it's kind of gets to the point where you're like, let's move on, or maybe interchange those with some newer things. But what do you think about this restaurant overall, Dad?
It's probably my favorite in the whole Walt Disney World,
Really?
hands down. Other than Liberty Tree Tavern is right there with it. Liberty
Yeah.
Tree Tavern's food is awesome and the atmosphere, I love it. But there's something about sci-fi. I've been there probably 7 or 8 times over the years. I just love it. I love that era. You know, being a guy who grew up in the 60s, a lot of those are from early 60s, mostly 1950s, the movies they're showing.
Hmm.
But I do agree with you. They should change the film clip out. They've had that same film clip probably maybe since the inception of the restaurant, and
Yeah.
I think I have it memorized. But I would like to see that changed. Do some more creative things like that. But I love the atmosphere. I love the idea. Super creative. It's my generation drive-in movies. I absolutely love the restaurant. I love the burgers. Love the chocolate shakes that I always get there. The last waiter we had there last January was phenomenal. One of the best waiters I think I've ever had at Disney World, and that's saying a lot. So yeah, I just really like sci-fi. Always will.
Yeah, I agree. I think the theming is just so fun, and being able to sit in a car as an adult is fun, but as a kid was so fun. It was like such a unique experience, and we had never been to a drive-in movie, but this is like the best case drive-in movie because it's air conditioned and you don't have to sit outside with bugs and stuff, and you get to
Right.
sit in a car and eat actual food, not just like popcorn or whatever snacks. So I do, yeah, I think it's really cool. It's definitely one of our favorite restaurants to go to, or mine, I should say. And I definitely think that it should stay. I don't think they'll get rid of it. If anything, again, I think they would retheme it, but or not retheme it, but retheme the film reel potentially. But I think it has been the same film reel since it opened. So it's like it could use a little bit of an update. It's been, 32 years. No, 34 years. So yeah, yeah, but I do love this one as well. And I definitely think it's the best in Hollywood studios. I like Mama Melrose, but I just think the experience here is top notch for sure. And then ABC Commissary, that is next door, and that is a quick service restaurant. It opened December 16th, 1990, so not too long after the park opened, a year-ish after. And usually it does have plenty of seating indoors as well as air conditioning, which is a big plus. There are some outdoor tables as well, but not a lot of outdoor seating. And the menu has changed here a lot over the years. It went from the typical burgers and chicken tenders to now serving a little bit of fancier food, as I like to call it. They have like shrimp tacos, pork carnitas, pizzas. They do have buffalo chicken grilled cheese sandwiches, and adult entrees usually cost between like 11 and $15. They do have a couple of kids options here. Maddie really likes to go here when we go. I think he's gotten the carnitas before, and I know a few people that have tried the buffalo chicken grilled cheese and really like it. I think for me, I'm such a burger and pizza girl that I don't necessarily look for stuff like this when going in the park, but it is nice to have a little bit of variety, and the space here, being able to sit inside in the air conditioning is a huge plus. And there's usually a table. It's not always difficult to find a table. Something that I remember as a kid is that the bathrooms for this restaurant are shared with Sci-Fi. So when we were younger, we used to go into the commissary to eat, and it'd be like, ooh, let's sneak around the corner and look into Sci-Fi and see what part of the reel they're on. And we would kind of peek in there. But yeah, they do share the same bathroom. So if you eat at Sci-Fi, you kind of come out into the hallway that goes into the back hall of the commissary where the bathrooms are. And initially, this restaurant was just called the Commissary, not ABC Commissary, but that only happened until 1997 due to the ABC and Disney merger, which happened in 1996. So I wasn't sure when that merger happened, so it's interesting to read a little bit about that. And it does feature a lot of movie and television awards that are on display. On the outside of the restaurant, they have all these hanging pendants and banners that have different current ABC shows like The Bachelor, and I don't even know any other current ABC shows because I don't watch very much TV, but different stuff like that. ESPN sometimes is featured there. Yeah, so this is always a place that is an option. We don't go there as much as we used to just because there are other places at Hollywood Studios for quick service that I prefer. But what do you remember about this restaurant, Dad?
I remember going many times when we first get to the park. We'd go in there and grab some breakfast type food. I don't know if they still do
Oh, yeah.
breakfast.
I don't
Like
think they do. I'd have to
they
look it up. Let me
they
look.
had like pancakes and French toast and scrambled eggs, stuff kind of stuff. And so we would do that. We did that a few times. That was probably in the late '90s when you kids were real young. Yeah, I didn't find myself going there that much after that. It started, if we could ever get into Sci-Fi, we would always try and get into Sci-Fi, which was very difficult reservation to get, still is today.
Yeah.
Hard to get in there. But yeah, the commissary I thought was good. It was a little kind of inexpensive, if that's even a word at Disney.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, we went there. We went there again for breakfast a few times, and it was good.
That it is, yeah, it's always just a, easy location if you're walking through the area, but definitely do prefer Sci-Fi if you can get in there. It doesn't say that they have breakfast right now, but in the last 5 years they have. So I think they kind of come and go. Maybe in busy season they have breakfast, but it's not
Okay.
listed as of right now. So, yeah, that's a little bit about the commissary, and that actually is a wrap on the commissary lane. That's all that's over there. So it is, again, funny that they kind of include that as its own section. So now we're going to move over to Grand Avenue, which is as you kind of walk through Commissary Lane past Sci-Fi, then you walk into Grand Avenue. And this whole area inside of the Muppets courtyard is soon to be gone and totally redone. In May of this year, it all closes with Monstropolis taking over. So it'll be interesting to see if they call it Monstropolis or Monsters Inc. Land or what they're going to rename it, or if they keep it as Grand Avenue. Technically, Grand Avenue starts once you get right past Sci-Fi. And the first thing that is technically there is actually the little bar on the corner, which used to be a coffee shop, I believe, but now it's called the Baseline Tap House. So that's kind of where it starts. We'll talk about that more towards the end when we're talking about the dining. But the attractions in this area, there's actually only one. And the single attraction that is about to go away is Muppet Vision 3D. And there's a lot of history in this ride. I think somebody could do an entire episode just on this, but it did open May 16th, 1991. And it opened almost exactly 1 year after Jim Henson's death. So sometimes it was referred to as Muppet Vision 4D because of the additional effects like bubbles and water spraying and things like that. It was filmed on Soundstage 3 at the Walt Disney Studios in January 1990 and was directed by Henson and written by Bill Prady. And this show was one of the final Muppet productions that had the involvement of Jim Henson, which I think is why it's such a big deal that it's going away, as well as a veteran Muppet performer, Richard Hunt. And it was the last time that Jim Henson and Richard Hunt performed their characters. Henson died in 1990 before the production of the film was even completed, and Hunt died in 1992. But on August 28th, 1989, Disney announced that they had an agreement in principle to acquire Henson Associates and the Muppet characters, and that the 3D Muppets attraction would debut at Disney MGM Studios at the time, now known as Hollywood Studios, in the following May, so in May of 1990. But Henson died before the attraction could debut, and as a result, the acquisition was canceled, and the attraction, which is now known as Muppet Vision 3D, was delayed in becoming an attraction at the parks because they had to go into all these agreements and kind of remake the agreement that they had initially planned on with Henson being alive. So, an agreement to license the Muppets characters to Disney for the theme park attraction was reached, and it finally opened May 16th, 1991, which was the first anniversary of Henson's death. The attraction was initially sponsored by Kodak when it opened in 1991, but in 2012, the company declined to renew sponsorship, and in 2013, all of the references to Kodak were removed. I definitely remember when all the different Kodak things were inside the ride, especially in like the pre-show area and like the queue area. But before guests were seated in the theater, they do have this queue which winds through the Muppet Labs, home of Dr. Bunsen Honeydew and his assistant Beaker. The audience passes through several office doors, which have kind of crazy job descriptions and little movie posters that are spoofs that feature the Muppets, including The Bride of Froggenschwein, The Pigsidian Adventure, and Super Beaker 2. And then you enter this big room where there's all these props and boxes with different labels on them that are kind of funny and cheesy. And there's a cute little pre-show that you watch before you're brought into the theater for the main show itself. So the characters that are featured in the show include all of the greats and the main characters. So Statler and Waldorf, Kermit, Miss Piggy, Gonzo, Fozzie Bear, the Swedish Chef, Rizzo, Dr. Bunsen Honeydew, Beakers, Sam the Eagle, Bean Sweetums, who also appears in like a fully dressed character in the audience at one point during the show. It's like a costume character. And of course, the Penguins. And the new character who first appeared in the Jim Henson Hour is Waldo C. It's Waldo C graphic, which is a living 3D effect. So I actually thought that he debuted in this, but he was in something else called the Jim Henson Hour before this came out. And the show is really adorable. It has a lot of really funny moments. I think two of my favorite parts of this show are when Sam the Eagle says that it's going to be a tribute to all nations, but mostly America. And then also when he says it'll be a grand 3 hour finale, and Kermit's like, you've got about a minute and a half. It always makes me laugh. I just went and saw it when Eileen and I were there as our last little hurrah for Muppets because we won't be back before it closes. But I still cracked up, and I really loved this show. So I am bummed that it's going to be gone. And yeah, so what do you remember about this show, Dad?
I grew up with the Muppets. I watched Sesame Street with your Aunt Julie. She was like 3, I remember, back in the early 70s. And so we grew up with all those characters. The Muppet Show in the 80s was huge, and all the different Muppet movies. I'm sure you've seen many of those.
Yeah.
Muppet Christmas Carol and all the ones they did were really well done, funny. It's just the writing was amazing. The characters are wonderful. I love Sam the Eagle. I could live without the was it Waldo? I could live without Waldo. He was just to me he was a little annoying, but
Yeah.
I did like the show. I'm going to be sad that it's gone. I've been there, been to the show many times with you and Regan, with Doreen, and of course Michaela, our other granddaughter, a number of times. And yeah, we'll miss it. It's well done. Hopefully they'll bring maybe part of that back somewhere else, somewhere. I'm hoping, but time will tell.
Yeah, yeah. And the theater is pretty big. It holds about 584 people, and the show in total is 17 minutes long. And when I went to it, I was looking up how long it was, and I was like, I don't think it's that long, but that includes the pre-show. So the pre-show and the show are 17 minutes total. Because I was like, no way that whole thing is 17 minutes. But yeah, I think that's a total between the two from what I could understand. And this was also at Disney's California Adventure from 2001 until 2014. It was an opening day attraction at California Adventure. And interesting to me was that this theater where Muppet Vision was at California Adventure is in a section of the park called Hollywoodland, and it's located right next to the Monsters Inc. Dark Ride, which is at DCA. And I didn't know that because when Maddie and I went to California Adventure, that theater was actually showing this preview of Incredibles 2, which we actually went to. We sat in the theater and totally unbeknownst to us, we're sitting in the old Muppet Vision 3D theater. I didn't even know that this was ever at California Adventure. So that was interesting to me. And then since then, the theater has changed over to DCA's version of PhilharMagic. So I do think that it's interesting because, as all of us know who are listening to this podcast, or most likely all of y'all know, this area, like I said earlier, is being taken over and replaced by Monstropolis or Monsters Inc. land here on the East Coast. So I think it's funny that it was next to Monsters Inc. and the Dark Ride over there, and now it's going to be taken over Monsters Inc. over here. So yeah, I mean, I don't know what the curse is with Monsters Inc. and Muppets. They don't get along apparently. So I do hope, yeah, like Dad said, that they bring this over to the California or to at Disney World at Hollywood Studios near Rock and Roller Coaster. They do have that theater back where the Cars show was, where they're supposedly going to do that little villain show for a hot minute. But my hope is that they'll move it over there or do some kind of little version of it somehow. I wouldn't mind if it took over the Hall of Presidents and kind of went there instead or was utilized in that somehow. I don't know how they could do that, but I do think the show is cute, and it being one of Jim Henson's last works, I was very shocked that they were going to get rid of it. There's also been talk about it coming to Disney Plus, so we'll see. And then moving over into the dining in this area, there are a couple of things for dining. So the first is just a little kind of stand called Ice Cold Hydraulics that opened in February 2024. So just about a year old, a little over a year old. And we did stop here when I was just at the parks. It's right outside of the Muppets courtyard, kind of across from the Baseline Tap House. And it serves like popcorn pretzels. They do have some fun little things that we haven't tried but sounded good that are called candy painted cinnamon rolls that are like mini cinnamon rolls topped with Coca-Cola infused glaze, which sounds good, and toasted nuts on the top. I could do without the nuts, but the Coca-Cola infused glaze sounds very interesting. And then they also do have mini churros as well as bouncin' mini churros, which are churros topped with Coca-Cola and bourbon candied bacon, sriracha, aioli, and scallion. So I was like, huh, some interesting little treats there. There is an definitely ice cream bars and stuff like that, slushies that are alcoholic or non-alcoholic, and beer and wine. We got just popcorn when we stopped there just because it was on the way when we were going from Galaxy's Edge to watch Beauty and the Beast. We went that way and they had popcorn and I wanted some, but I was like, ooh, those cinnamon rolls with the whatever Coca-Cola infused glaze sounds delicious. But yeah, it is a newer thing. Was this open when y'all were last at Hollywood Studios, Dad? Do you know?
I remember seeing the kiosk there. We didn't stop, but I figured it was new. I've never seen it before that. So yeah, that was about the time we were there. It must have just opened.
Yeah, because I don't remember seeing it last year, and we went to Hollywood Studios. I think last year we went to Epcot and Hollywood, and for whatever reason, I don't remember seeing it, but it might have like not opened yet or was about to open. So it is, yeah, fairly new. And then within the Muppets Courtyard is Pizza Rizzo, and this opened November 18th, 2016, and this had quite a bit of information online. Like I said, I think somebody could do an entire episode just on like the Muppets Courtyard, and I'm sure people will as it's getting ready to close. But this is really like a mediocre pizza, Caesar salad, meatball subs, and sausage sub restaurant, like quick service restaurant. It ranges from about $8 to $14. The menu has pretty much stayed the same, but I didn't realize how much it had changed over the years. So it used to be Pizza Planet, and that's what I remember it as growing up. But did you know that before Pizza Planet, it was a Muppets restaurant? Did you know that, Dad? That initially it started as a Muppets like area, I guess area. It wasn't necessarily a restaurant.
I had no idea. I always thought it was. I always thought it was Pizza Planet.
Me
I
too.
guess,
So
but that would make sense though. If it, I don't know when it opened originally. If it opened with the park, Toy Story wasn't even out until what, 95. So
yeah.
I could see why that could be something else before it was Pizza Planet.
Yeah, yeah. Toy Story was like early 90s. And so it was not Pizza Planet initially. So the original concept for this location and Mama Melrose was said to have been the Swedish chef's cooking school. And it would have been a restaurant where you can watch the Swedish chef attempt to prepare dishes while you dine. And then next door, where Mama Melrose is located now, was going to be the Great Gonzo's Pizza Pandemonium Parlor, which was owned and operation by Gonzo. The main draw for the pizza restaurant was going to be Rizzo and his other rat buddies moving along the tracks in the rafters above the diners' heads. And all of these ideas were canceled when the merger between Disney and the Jim Henson Company fell through in the 90s. And all they got out of that, like, agreement was Muppet Vision 3D. But these restaurants got the boot when that merger didn't go through. So the larger of the two spaces ended up being used to show off movie props instead back in the day. But and that I guess is where Pizza Rizzo is. I guess that's the larger because it is a little larger than Mama Melrose, and then Mama Melrose opened. And that was all came from Orlando Park Stop. They had this interesting article about that. But when you fast forward several years later, the building was taken over by Toy Story Pizza Planet, which became this pizza restaurant and video arcade. And it didn't actually look anything like Pizza Planet in the movie, but it was just utilized the building that was already there. Um, and then Pizza Planet lasted at the park for almost 20 years. It closed in 2016 to make way for Pizza Rizzo. So it was there, yeah, from about 95 or so on. And to pay tribute to Pizza Planet, you can now find a sign that's above the front entrance of Pizza Rizzo that says the best pizza on the planet, but the two words are larger, pizza and planet. So from a distance, it looks like it still says Pizza Planet. And even though it is a quick service location, it does have a lot of theming and it's a little more subtle than some of the other places that are heavily themed, but you can definitely tell if you look closely. So the Imagineers still really created a backstory for this restaurant, and this is where I thought it was super interesting. So the area near the entrance across from the ordering stations has photographs and mementos honoring who appears to be Rizzo's father. So Rizzo, for those of y'all who are not familiar, is a little rat from the Muppets. And Papa Rizzo's apron from 1916 is on display. They do have a little league team named City Rats that can be seen alongside of a pendant and a baseball bat in both human and rat sizes. And then, according to a postcard on the corkboard upstairs, this Pizza Rizzo in Southern California is the second famous original Pizza Rizzo. So it can be assumed that the first was opened by his father in New York. And Rizzo celebrated his grand opening with a free slice on him, but the coupon was only ever valid next week. So it's just like a little kind of funny thing that they did. And there are a lot of Easter eggs in this restaurant. So Rizzo led a kitchen staff of rats in the diner that was featured in the movies The Muppets Take Manhattan. So there is a little clever effect hidden in the large neon sign above the restaurant. Most of the time, it reads the city's top rated pizza, but every so often it flickers out and it says it's rat pizza. Those are the only letters that are kind of highlighted. The phone number for Pizza Rizzo has rat hidden in it. It's RA74996. And then, although the upstairs dining area, you find a lot of different references to rats and mice. They have different Broadway playbills for shows like Of Mice and Men, or records that have mention of rats or pizza. And then you find them kind of all over the walls up there. And since it changed to Pizza Rizzo from Pizza Planet, there is a little area on the top floor towards the bathrooms. It's like a banquet hall facade and advertised outside on the flyers upstairs as Rizzo's Deluxe Supreme Banquet Hall, which puts Rat in Celebrate. And it accommodates about 150 guests or 875 rats, it says on the sign. And the banquet hall features like a dance floor with a sound system. If you like cheesy wedding music and songs from the 90s, that's what it plays, and kids can kind of run around on the dance floor. So that was something that when we ate there last, I was like, what is this? And then kind of read the signs and then looked it up afterwards. I thought maybe it was like something to a Muppets movie. I don't ever remember that being there when Pizza Planet was there. Maybe it had games or something, but I just could not remember that section at all. So, Dad, have you been back in Pizza Rizzo since it got changed to that from Pizza Planet?
I
Oh,
think that's probably the first time I was there in some time. I really wish they never would have changed it from Toy Story, the
yeah.
Pizza Planet, the whole Pizza Rizzo rat thing. Why Disney spent all that money to do what they did there, it makes to me it makes absolutely zero sense. I know it's tied in with the Muppets, so they should have did that right off the bat then and just kept it that way. But I thought the Pizza Planet, even though you're right, it wasn't anything far as the way the movie, the restaurant movie looked. I get all that, but they had fun video games there, and I just wish they never would have changed it. Their pizza, again, I'm a plain food guy. I like their pizza. I know we ate their pizzas there many times, and I still
Yeah.
like their little single pizzas that we got there many times. But yeah, I guess I just wish they never would have changed it. Just always wish they would have kind of left it the Pizza Planet.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely love the Pizza Planet. I haven't been to Pizza Planet over at Disneyland. We might go there when we're there this summer, but yeah, Disneyland does have a Pizza Planet that looks a little bit more like Pizza Planet in the movie. This one is definitely less visually like the movie Pizza Planet, but it was really neat how they had, the different video games and stuff like that in it. And it was just a nice place to have a break. There's a lot of seating in here. Again, a place that you rarely cannot find a seat. And there are still a lot of other little Easter eggs. A few of them include once you come out of the banquet hall, there is a sign that shows information for the next upcoming event. And the sign is covered with Muppet references. At the top of the message, it says Somebody Got Married, which is an allusion to the song from the finale of the Muppets Take Manhattan called Somebody's Getting Married. And even the names of the people getting married, Gil and Lil, along with their family, Will, Jill, Phil, and Bill, is another nod to the film. And the characters were part of the advertising agency that Kermit joins after losing his memory. And then in 2016, the Streets of America area, like we talked about earlier, closed. And so they took some of the city street signs that were there and moved them into this restaurant, but made them with different little Muppet nods. There's like a Miss Piggy as a Statue of Liberty sign as well. And at the time that when the Muppets Courtyard and Muppet Vision 3D came to light, that was kind of when you could initially see Pizza Rizzo featured this Grand Avenue address. So it used to have an address of Grand Avenue when it opened just a few months after the Streets of America closed. So they've moved a lot of those old props and signs over there, kind of a New Yorkish style pizzeria feel. There is a big subway station sign for 18th Street Station, which was featured on the fake subway entrance when Streets of America was still open. There's an I-95 sign, New York Welcome Center sign. And then there is a corkboard bulletin board thing upstairs that has a lot of different flyers and business cards for strange things with the Muppets in them. And there's some photographs on the corkboard as well, which look like a normal human picture of like a wedding, but they do sneak Muppets in there too. So a lot of little nods to the Muppets throughout this restaurant. And so it's, definitely going away. I'm curious what quick service they'll have in the Monsters Inc. land. I know they've talked about Mama Melrose becoming Harryhausen's, which is like a Japanese steakhouse kind of sushi restaurant. So I'm curious what will become of Pizza Rizzo and if it will still serve pizza or not. We will see. And then we have Mama Melrose Ristorante Italiano, which opened September 26, 1991. It will be closing May 10th, 2025. And this is another one of my favorite sit down meals in Disney, which might be a stretch for people who are true Italians, but I do really like the food. It is single serve. They serve things like chicken parm, spaghetti and meatballs, braised Wagyu steak, braised pork, fresh fish, as well as like they have New York ribeyes and stuff like that. And the entrees do range from about 25 to $40, so it is pricey. There are desserts and appetizers that are available as well. My only complaint is that last time that we went, which was a year ago or 2 years ago, I believe, it was pretty dark in there. So it can be kind of hard to see what you're doing if you have little kids and they're trying to color or whatever. Certain areas of the restaurant are pretty dark. It's like got a little bit of dim lighting with like fake candles on the table. So I don't love that. But the history behind this restaurant, which I didn't know, but there was a whole article on it on Mouse Planet, and it kind of talked about the Mama Melrose, how they came up with this name. And I guess one of the suggestions of what they were going to name this restaurant was Funicello's or Annette's to honor Disney legend Annette Funicello. And the restaurant would have been decorated with record albums and movie posters from her performing career. But they didn't end up going with that, even though Annette maintained a very good relationship with Disney Company and several members of the family still work for the Disney Company today. One of the things that actually killed the proposal was that a top executive at the park who no longer works for the Disney Company had never heard of this person. And so they felt other Disney guests would never know about this person. So they didn't go with it. But in Disneyland Paris's Disney Village, there is an Annette's Diner, which is a table service restaurant that is a tribute to her. So it is a bummer that they didn't go with that because it's like a true person. And what they did instead was make up this entirely artificial and fictional storyline that was developed by the Disney Imagineers about a young girl in a small Sicilian village in Italy who fell in love with the magic of Hollywood movies when she worked in her father's restaurant. And her father loved her dearly and shared all his secret recipes with her. And at the age of 16, she sailed to America, found a movie career as a stand-in actress with names like Gina, Sophia, and Anna. And while she waited between scenes with the other extras, she cooked Italian dishes with a little California flavor. And so they made up this whole backstory about how her dreams of stardom were not coming true. So she opened up this Italian restaurant and it was near the town's eccentric Melrose Avenue. So they nicknamed her Mama Melrose. And the name was descriptive and stuck today. And so everyone was like, this is just a totally pretty much fictional story, and instead of using the real person, they decided to go with this story, which I have never heard of. So a lot of people that work at this restaurant have never heard of this story either and don't know the backstory. So I'm like, okay, if no one who works there or goes there knows about this, why didn't they just use the real person and their story? But anyway, I thought that was very interesting. There was a lot of information about this little behind the scenes story. Did you know this, Dad? Like this fictional story that they made up?
That's the first time, Olivia, I ever heard it.
Yeah, I was like, wow, they got really into this and like the backup side of it. But what do you think about this restaurant?
I always liked it. I've only been there probably half a dozen times over the years, but I always liked it. I thought the food was always pretty good. Yet it's a little pricey. There's other places I'd probably rather eat, as I mentioned before, at Hollywood Studios, but I thought the food was good. If I was going to want to do something Italian that wasn't pizza, I guess I would probably I'll probably go to Mama Melrose and get their lasagna or whatever.
Yeah, we've been here just a couple of times, but we do really like it. And so, yeah, it's a neat little nod to old Hollywood. They do have, some different things. They had this Star Today program that was used to reinforce the idea that the theme park guests had come to Hollywood or in the midst of a real working film studio. So it's obviously fit with their original theme of it being like behind the scenes of the movies. But today kind of has moved away from that a lot. So this restaurant going away does make sense, but now there won't really be a good Italian restaurant within Hollywood studios. Something interesting that I read too was that like a lot of people don't even know about this restaurant because it is tucked very far back, kind of in a corner of the park. And so unless you're on the Disney app and you see it, you might not even ever walk by it because it's back in the corner, kind of behind Muppet Vision 3D and the Pizza Rizzo area, and it's very easy to miss. So It's not one that a lot of people frequent, mostly because they don't know that it's there. So yeah, it is going away soon. So curious what it will change into, but I will miss Mama Melrose. And the very last restaurant or dining area of this section of the park is the Baseline Tap House, which we mentioned earlier. It's kind of the front of this Grand Avenue area of the park. And it opened September 29th, 2017. I believe it used to be a coffee shop. Is that right, Dad? It used to be like it was kind of a nod to like an old coffee shop on the corner, I thought.
Yeah, I remember getting coffee there and hot chocolate. I think it was kind of like a little bookstore, wasn't it? There
Oh,
was
maybe, yeah. They had like
like a,
a
yeah, there
store
was some
inside.
yeah, just different Disney books, Imagineer books, and different types of books. And they had just a little bit of a little coffee area there. It was very small, if I remember right. We
Yeah.
walked in there a few times. Yeah.
Yeah, and it still is very small on the inside. They have some seating, like outdoor kind of courtyard type seating. And this is one of the things that I think will remain after the constructions for Monsters Inc. because it's kind of outside of that courtyard area. We'll see. I know it is very popular because they have a lot of different things on tap. They have beers, wines, cocktails, and liquor that they serve there. They also have some non-alcoholic options like this hibiscus on tap drink, this wild strawberry lemonade that people say is really good. And then the only really snacky things they have there are a Bavarian pretzel with cheese, which people say is awesome, and a charcuterie plate of like kind of different cheese and crackers and stuff like that, meats. So people really like the vibes of this place. I'm again not a big drinker at the parks because of the cost of it. Then drinks do go between like $10 and $20 for one single drink, which is bananas to me. So, yeah, that is something that people really do like, but it is a very small area. It's not really, there's not a lot of space to kind of sit. So, that's something that I think will remain because it's outside of the courtyard, like I said. And then there are a couple of character meet and greets in this area, which we actually did when we were just there a couple weeks ago. And the characters are Daisy and Donald, which meet right outside the Muppets courtyard. We just did this one specifically, and it's right outside of right where you walk into the courtyard. And Daisy and Donald characters were so interactive. It was so cute. They're pretty much there for the middle part of the day, for like late morning to late afternoon. Check the app again, and it should tell you. And they swap out occasionally. They'll like go take a little break and come back, but it's usually very quick, just like a couple of minutes. And yeah, they were great. So you get to meet both at once. The line wasn't terribly long. I think we maybe waited 10 minutes. And then kind of across the street there, right outside of the tunnel that goes to Galaxy's Edge, it almost always has a longer wait, but it's Max and Goofy. So this is one of the few spots that you can meet Max with Goofy. Usually it's just Goofy kind of with the other Fab Five characters, but Max is there for this. And we've seen this meet and greet a few times, but because the line is pretty long, we often skip it. And Max is high on my list to meet because we just haven't done it. I don't ever recall meeting Max. Maybe when we were kids, we never end up wanting to wait as long with the kids. So hopefully one day we'll actually do that. But at the time when we were there a couple weeks ago, Eiley was like, "Yeah, I don't want to stand in that long line." We already had met Goofy the day before at Epcot, so she wanted to pass. So we did decide to skip it. I don't remember, was there ever like a any kind of Muppet meet and greet or anything back here? Was there something with the guys that walk around with the flashlights from the Muppet Vision 3D show, Sweetums? I think that's their name.
Yeah, I don't ever remember any Muppet characters walking around or being doing a meet and greet. I just don't remember that. It's a great question. There might have been, but I we were there so much. It seems like we would have saw them if they were, but I don't think so. I think a lot of those are probably hard to do unless it's a person in a costume. Of course, people like Big Bird and all that. That was actually a person walking around in a costume back in the day.
Yeah.
But other than that, a lot of them were, basically hidden behind a counter or something that hid
Yeah,
the
it's like
puppeteer.
puppets.
So it'd
Hmm.
be hard probably to do. Yeah, I don't remember that. I don't think there ever was, but I just, yeah, I would think it'd be very difficult to do.
Yeah. So that is it for these two sections of the park. And now we're going to do our old versus new, which we did talk a little bit about, but Pizza Rizzo versus Pizza Planet. So as we kind of said, we both really loved Pizza Planet. So I'm guessing that would be your choice, Dad.
Definitely. Yeah. I wish they never would have turned it over to the rat.
Yeah, and I do wish I know they have Toy Story Land now, so it's like it doesn't necessarily make sense for it to be there. I wish they would have moved it to Toy Story Land, even if they made it a sit-down restaurant with like more options for pizzas and salads, like where they have that Woody's Rodeo barbecue or whatever it is. I wish they would have done a Pizza Planet of some type or something over there. But yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely love the Pizza Planet theme. We're huge Toy Story people, as we've talked about on this show. Not, I do like Muppets, but I'm not as into Muppets as I am into Toy Story. So my pick would definitely also be Pizza Planet. And then our trivia for this week, we have a fun question. So the question that we have is, in Phantasmic, which Disney villain does not terrorize Mickey Mouse? Is it Judge Claude Frollo, Gaston, Scar, or Cruella de Vil? Oh, I think I actually know this.
I would say Gaston.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Gaston is not in it, which surprises me. He's one of my favorite villains. Let's see. Yep, Gaston, that's correct. So the rest of them are in Phantasmic. I think they just mean like they're featured in the show. But yep, that is correct. So Judge Claude Frollo, Scar, and Cruella de Vil are all in Phantasmic, but Gaston is not, which again does surprise me. I am curious when we get to villains, which they've kind of laid out a list of which villains will be there, and Scar was not on the list, which really surprised me as one of the
Well,
villains that will be featured in Villains Land because I feel like he's a classic villain and they've done all this stuff with the Mufasa movie again now. But yeah, very interesting. All right, so thank you guys so much for playing along and listening for this week. We do just have a couple of sections left in Hollywood Studios. It always is super fun to kind of run through each section, and every week I feel like I learn more than I thought that I knew. As we are approaching the end of our fun attraction showdown on Instagram, if you haven't been playing along, give us a follow at Soarin Around WDW Pod. Every couple days, we're posting some different polls to kind of pick the top attraction. And I think y'all will be surprised by what is winning. It's funny when I talk to people about this, they're like, well, obviously Guardians is going to win, or obviously Tiana's is going to win, or whatever. And so it's fun to watch what people are picking on the Instagram. So be on the lookout for that. The episode next week will show which attraction was the champion. So I'm excited to see which ride ends up winning. So thanks for playing along, and thanks again, Dad, for joining us this week. We look forward to next week and continuing our dive into Hollywood studios.
see you next week.
Hey, thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to give us a follow on Instagram at Soarin Around WDW Pod, where we share fun reels, throwback photos, and dive into our old versus new debates. If you're listening on YouTube, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment. And for our Spotify listeners, a follow and a 5-star review would mean the world. If you're listening on Apple, hit that 5-star button and leave us a written review as well. Thanks again for joining us. See you next time.